You know that moment when you realize your husband's business trips were actually auditions for a new life, and you weren't even called back for a cameo? Yeah, that was my Tuesday. Apparently, finding out your spouse has been playing sugar daddy to his side piece by renting her a swanky new apartment isn't what they mean by expanding your real estate portfolio. It's more like a hostile takeover of your entire existence, only you're the one being evicted from your own narrative. And let me tell you, when Owen, my darling husband of 12 years, decided to upgrade his mistress's living situation, he unwittingly signed the lease on his own spectacular downfall. It all started, as these things often do, with a gut feeling. That little whisper in the back of your mind that screams, dumpster fire incoming, even when everything looks picture perfect on the surface. Owen Campbell, my charming, successful, and apparently very generous husband, had been acting off. More working late, more client dinners, more, I'll just crash at a hotel near the office, babe. Don't wait up. For a senior sales executive at Sterling and Hayes, a big-shot tech firm in Charlotte, that was plausible. He traveled, he networked, he closed deals. He also, as it turns out, opened a few new accounts of the romantic variety. We lived in Maple Creek, a picture-perfect gated community just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. Think manicured lawns, HOA meetings that could rival a Senate filibuster, and enough SUVs to ferry a small army of soccer players. Our house was a colonial dream. 4 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a backyard big enough for Lily and Ethan, our 2 kids, to run wild. We were the quintessential upper-middle-class American family. Or so I thought. My name's Harper Monroe, 38, and I'm a freelance graphic designer. My office is basically my kitchen island, which means I'm home a lot. Maybe too much in retrospect. I saw the subtle shifts in Owen, the new cologne that wasn't our scent, the sudden interest in organic kale smoothies, the way he'd subtly angle his phone away from me, even when he was just scrolling through sports scores. Little things, like tiny paper cuts, adding up to a gaping wound. The real red flag, the one that screamed code red abandoned ship, was when he mentioned a new client in the Ballantine area, a swanky, up-and-coming neighborhood known for its luxury condos and trendy eateries. He said he'd be there for a few days, really digging deep into their needs. But the thing is, I'd discreetly installed a location tracker on his phone a few weeks prior. Not because I'm a psycho, but because my intuition was screaming louder than a toddler denied ice cream. And that tracker? It showed him spending an awful lot of time not at a Marriott conference room, but at a brand new apartment complex called the Vistas at Ballantine. A quick drive-by confirmed my suspicions. Owen's sleek black Mercedes was parked conspicuously in the visitor section. My heart did that little flutter and drop thing, like when you miss a step on the stairs. I called my friend Chloe, a realtor who specialized in Ballantine properties. I played it cool. Hey, Chloe, just curious. You know anything about the Vistas? Thinking of maybe investing or a rental property for my sister? Chloe, bless her gossipy heart, spilled the tea faster than a barista on a caffeine high. Oh, the Vistas! Super hot right now. Actually, Harper, your husband, Owen, just rented a unit there. Said it was for a friend moving to town. Nice place, fully furnished, top floor. Saw him with a younger woman during the walkthrough, actually. Cute, blonde, looked like she was still in college. Boom. That was the sound of my world shattering into a million tiny, glittery pieces. A friend, a younger woman, a fully furnished top-floor apartment. It wasn't just an affair. It was a full-service, platinum-tier, all-inclusive resort for 2, paid for by my husband, and, by extension, by me. My hard work, my sacrifices, our joint accounts, funding his little love nest, the audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall. The next 24 hours were a blur of cold fury and meticulous planning. Owen, oblivious, was still spinning his working late yarn. He even told me he'd stay at a hotel near the office for the next 2 nights due to a big deadline. Oh, Owen, you sweet, predictable fool. You just handed me the keys to your kingdom of lies. I called my sister, Sarah, a fiery redhead with a penchant for dramatic flair, and arranged for Lily and Ethan to have a girls' night sleepover at her place. Mommy needs some quiet time to work on a big project, I told them. my voice a little too saccharine. They bought it, bless their innocent hearts. Then I made 2 more calls. The first was to Brenda Walsh, my divorce attorney. Brenda wasn't just a lawyer. She was a legal pit bull in a designer suit, known for turning cheating spouses into financially destitute cautionary tales. "Brenda," I said, my voice eerily calm, "I think it's time we discuss Owen's new real estate venture." The second call was to Mike Reynolds, a private investigator I'd used once for a tricky client background check. Mike was an ex-cop, quiet but incredibly efficient. "Mike," I explained, "I need some eyes and ears in a certain apartment at the Vistas. Tonight." My plan wasn't just about catching them in the act. Oh no, that would be too simple, too messy, too undignified. My plan was about turning Owen's grand romantic gesture into his most humiliating, public, and financially ruinous mistake. It was about making him wish he'd just stuck to a cheap motel and a burner phone. This wasn't just a surprise. It was a carefully choreographed, emotionally devastating, and darkly comedic performance. And I, Harper Monroe, was about to take center stage. As I drove towards Ballantyne that Tuesday afternoon, a strange calm settled over me. The anger was still there, a simmering cauldron beneath the surface, but it was now channeled, focused. This wasn't about tears or screaming matches. This was about precision. This was about poetic justice, American style, served with a side of passive-aggressive perfection. Owen thought he was slick, a master of deception. He was about to learn that a woman scorned, especially one with a good lawyer and a knack for design, is a force of nature. And he was about to get caught in my perfectly laid trap, right in his little love nest. The question wasn't if he'd be surprised, but how utterly speechless he'd be. And I couldn't wait to see his face. The apartment complex, the Vistas, was exactly what you'd expect. Sleek, modern, and oozing with the kind of soulless luxury that screams aspirational. It was the kind of place where young professionals came to pretend they had it all figured out, or where older men came to pretend they were still young. Owen, bless his midlife crisis heart, clearly fell into the latter category. I had the spare key he'd misplaced weeks ago, a little silver lining in this cloudy mess. It was for the gym locker, he'd said. Turns out, it was for apartment 14B. The irony was not lost on me. Brenda, my lawyer, met me in the lobby, her expression a perfect blend of professional gravitas and thinly veiled amusement. "Harper," she said, her voice low and crisp, "are we ready to make some magic?" Mike, the PI, was already inside, having somehow managed to borrow a master key from building management, a testament to his ex-cop charm, I suppose. He was setting up tiny, discreet cameras, capturing every angle. "Just for evidence, Harper," he'd said earlier. "To prove everything. No sound, just video. Perfectly legal for a spouse in a shared property, even if it's shared in a very unique way." I just nodded, a grim smile playing on my lips. Inside 14B, the apartment was exactly as Chloe had described. Tastefully furnished, minimalist, and utterly devoid of any personal touch. It was a blank canvas, just waiting for my artistic intervention. "All right, team," I announced, pulling a large tote bag from my shoulder. "Let's make this place feel a little more lived in. First, the balloons. Not just any balloons, mind you. I'd ordered custom-printed ones from a party supply store. Bright red, heart-shaped, emblazoned with phrases like, "Congrats on the affair," and "Owen and Tiffany, true love," and my personal favorite, "Home Sweet Home, Wrecker." We tied them to every piece of furniture, letting them float mockingly above the pristine white sofa and the sleek glass coffee table. It was like a twisted, passive-aggressive Valentine's Day massacre. Next, the photos. I'd printed out dozens of pictures. Not just any pictures, but our pictures. Owen and me on our wedding day, beaming. Owen holding Lily as a baby, his face full of adoration. Owen and Ethan at the beach, laughing. Family portraits from our last Christmas card shoot. I taped them to the fridge, the bathroom mirror, the inside of the pantry door. Everywhere they might look, they'd see the ghost of the family he was actively demolishing. It was a visual gaslighting, a reminder of what he was throwing away for a cheap thrill. "Let's see if Tiffany enjoys her morning coffee with a side of my smiling face," I muttered, sticking a particularly gleeful picture of me and Owen from our honeymoon right above the espresso machine. Then came the pièce de résistance, the dinner. I'd ordered takeout from Owen's favorite Italian place, Mama Rosa's, the one we always went to for our anniversary. Lobster ravioli, his go-to. A bottle of the expensive Cabernet Sauvignon he loved. I set the table for 3. 2 plates, 2 sets of silverware, 2 wine glasses. And then, at the 3rd setting, right across from where Owen would sit, I placed a framed photo of Brenda Walsh, my divorce attorney, with a small, elegant place card that read, "Brenda Walsh, Escure, your new best friend." Brenda herself just chuckled, adjusting her glasses. "Oh, Harper, you're a gem. This is going to be legendary." Mike, ever the professional, just gave a rare, small smile. "The cameras are rolling. Everything's in place. You want me to stay hidden, Harper?" I nodded. "Just make sure you get their faces when they walk in. That's the money shot." As the clock ticked closer to 7 p.m., the tension in the apartment was palpable. It was like waiting for a jump scare in a horror movie, but instead of fear, I felt a surge of exhilarating, righteous indignation. My heart was pounding, not with sadness, but with a fierce, almost primal satisfaction. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about showing Owen that I wasn't some naive suburban wife who would quietly fade into the background. I was a force, and he was about to feel the full impact. I took a moment to compose myself, smoothing down my dress. I wasn't going to be a weeping mess. I was going to be poised, elegant, and utterly devastating. I even put on a touch of lipstick. If I was going to watch my life implode, I was going to look fabulous doing it. Then, I heard it. The faint click of the elevator, followed by footsteps approaching the door. My breath hitched. This was it. The moment of truth. I took a deep, steadying breath. A small, knowing smile playing on my lips. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. Owen walked in first, a smug, self-satisfied grin on his face. His arm casually slung around a young blonde woman, Tiffany. She was exactly as Chloe described. Pretty, probably in her mid-20s, dressed in a trendy, slightly too revealing top. They were laughing, a light, carefree sound that grated on my nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard. And then they stopped, dead in their tracks. Their laughter died, replaced by a stunned, frozen silence. Owen's eyes, initially scanning the apartment with proprietary satisfaction, widened in disbelief as they landed on the red balloons, then the photos, then the dinner table. His jaw dropped. Tiffany's eyes followed his, her face draining of color as she processed the scene. The "congrats on the affair" balloon seemed to bob mockingly above her head. "Surprise," I chirped, stepping out from behind the kitchen island, a perfectly innocent smile plastered on my face. "Hope you guys like Italian. It's Owen's favorite, you know. And I thought we could all have a little dinner party." Owen looked like he'd seen a ghost. His face was a masterpiece of horror, confusion, and dawning dread. Tiffany, on the other hand, looked like she was about to bolt. This wasn't the romantic hideaway she'd envisioned. This was a scene from a psychological thriller, and she was clearly not the leading lady. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, the silence louder than any scream. This was just the appetizer. The main course was about to be served, and it was going to be delicious. Owen's mouth opened and closed a few times like a fish out of water, before he finally managed to stammer, "Harper? What? What are you doing here?" His voice was a pathetic squeak, completely devoid of his usual corporate swagger. Tiffany, meanwhile, had retreated a step, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on the framed photo of Brenda Walsh at the dinner table. Her face registered pure, unadulterated panic. "Oh, Owen," I said, my voice dripping with mock sweetness. "I'm just being a good wife. You mentioned you'd be working late, so I thought I'd bring dinner to your new office. And it seems you've already found a coworker to share the late nights with." I gestured to Tiffany with a flourish. Tiffany, I presume. It's so lovely to finally put a face to the name I've seen all over Owen's phone. And darling, that top is certainly a choice for a business meeting. Tiffany flushed a deep crimson, her eyes narrowing at my not-so-subtle jab. Owen, however, was still stuck in a loop. How did you get in? He stammered, his gaze fixed on the spare key I was now dangling from my finger. Oh, this old thing? I said, twirling it. Found it in your gym bag. Thought it might be useful. Turns out, it was. Who knew a gym locker key could open so many doors, literally and figuratively? The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Owen finally seemed to snap out of his stupor, his face contorting into a mask of anger mixed with fear. Harper, this is insane. You can't just break into an apartment. Break in? I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. Owen, darling, this apartment is technically still under our marital assets, considering the funds used to secure it came from our joint account. And since you listed it as for a friend, I simply assumed I was the friend. Imagine my surprise when I found out you'd already invited another guest. I paused, letting that sink in. Besides, I have a witness, and more importantly, a lawyer. I gestured to the empty chair, where Brenda's photo sat. Brenda is very thorough, Owen. She loves details, and I've been collecting quite a few. That's when Brenda, sensing her cue, calmly stepped out from behind the kitchen island, a small, professional smile on her face. Good evening, Owen. Tiffany. She nodded politely. Brenda Walsh, Harper's attorney. I believe we have a few things to discuss. Owen's face went from pale to ghostly. Tiffany gasped, a small, choked sound. The sight of a real, live, no-nonsense lawyer was clearly not on her agenda for the evening. This wasn't just a wife catching her husband, this was a strategic ambush, complete with legal artillery. The power dynamic shifted dramatically. Owen wasn't the smooth, in-control executive anymore. He was a cornered rat. You brought a lawyer? Owen spluttered, his voice rising in pitch. Harper, this is completely out of line. Out of line? I scoffed, a genuinely bitter laugh escaping my lips. Owen, what's out of line is you secretly siphoning off our family's money to set up a love nest for your little girlfriend. What's out of line is you lying to me for months, making me feel like I was crazy, while you were building a whole second life behind my back. This, Owen, is just consequences, and they're about to get very real. Brenda stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Owen, we have photographic evidence, financial records, and now a direct confirmation of your extracurricular activities. Harper is prepared to file for divorce, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. We'll be seeking full custody of the children, substantial alimony, and a significant portion of your assets, including, of course, this charming little pied-à-terre. She gestured around the balloon-filled apartment. I'm sure the judge will find the congrats on the affair balloons a particularly compelling piece of evidence. Tiffany, who had been silently absorbing all this, finally found her voice. Owen, what is she talking about? Financial misconduct? This is our apartment. She looked at him, her eyes wide with betrayal. The realization that her sugar daddy might be a financial liability, not an asset, was clearly dawning on her. Owen turned to her, his face a mask of desperation. Tiffany, it's not like that. She's just trying to cause trouble. Oh, I'm causing trouble? I interjected, stepping closer. Owen, you think this is trouble? This is just the warm-up act. Mike, our friend here, has been diligently documenting everything. Not just your arrival tonight, but your little rendezvous at the country club last week, your late-night work sessions at the hotel downtown, even that cozy brunch you had at the Daily Grind last Sunday. He's very thorough. At the mention of Mike, Owen's eyes darted around the room, searching for the hidden cameras. He looked like a man who suddenly realized he was starring in his own reality show, and he was the villain. Tiffany, too, looked terrified. The idea that their secret life had been under surveillance was clearly a shock. Now, Owen, Brenda continued, we can do this the easy way, or the hard way. The easy way involves you agreeing to our terms for an amicable, albeit swift, divorce. The hard way involves a very public, very messy court battle, where every single detail of your deception will be laid bare. And trust me, Harper has a flair for dramatic presentation. She glanced at the balloons, a hint of a smile. Owen was visibly shaking. The smugness was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. He looked at me, then at Brenda, then at Tiffany, who was now glaring at him, feeling utterly duped. The carefully constructed facade of his double life had not just crumbled. It had been detonated. And I, Harper Monroe, was holding the remote. "So," I said, my voice calm and steady, "are you going to sit down and enjoy your lobster ravioli, Owen? Or are you going to continue standing there looking like a deer caught in headlights, while your entire life goes up in flames? Because either way, this dinner party is just getting started, and I've got a lot more to say." The look on his face was priceless. He was trapped, cornered, and utterly exposed. This was not just a plot twist. It was a full-blown narrative inversion, and he was completely unprepared for the next chapter. Owen, utterly deflated, slowly sank into one of the dining chairs, avoiding my gaze. Tiffany, after a moment of stunned indecision, decided to make a run for it. I can't do this," she stammered, bolting for the door. "Owen, you never told me you were married. You said you were separated." Her voice was shrill, laced with genuine panic and a healthy dose of self-preservation. "Tiffany, wait!" Owen called out. But she was already gone, the door slamming shut behind her, leaving him alone in the balloon-filled apartment, facing his very angry wife and her very formidable lawyer. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated cinematic satisfaction. The side chick, fleeing the scene of the crime, leaving the main villain to face the music. "Well," I said, picking up a breadstick from the Mama Rosa's bag, "that was a rather dramatic exit. Guess she didn't fancy lobster ravioli with a side of legal consequences." I took a bite, savoring the crunch. "So, Owen, now that it's just us, perhaps we can have a more intimate discussion about your future, or lack thereof, with me." Brenda sat down opposite Owen, her posture impeccable. "Owen, let's be clear. Harper isn't interested in reconciliation. This isn't a negotiation about your marriage. This is a negotiation about your divorce. And given the circumstances, Harper holds all the cards." She laid out a preliminary document on the table, a stark white contrast to the vibrant red balloons. "We're looking at a 70-30 split of marital assets in Harper's favor, full custody of Lily and Ethan, and significant spousal and child support. This apartment will be immediately terminated from your lease, and any penalties incurred will be solely your responsibility." Owen finally found his voice, a pathetic whine. 70-30? Brenda, that's outrageous. I built my career. I earned that money. I leaned forward, my voice calm but laced with venom. "Oh, you earned it, Owen. You earned it while I was raising our kids, managing our home, and building my own freelance business from scratch, often working late into the night after the kids were asleep. You earned it while I was supporting your career, hosting your colleagues, and pretending our life was perfect. You earned it while you were lying to my face, Owen. And now, you get to pay for it. Literally." Brenda nodded. "Harper's contributions to your household and your career, both tangible and intangible, are significant. Furthermore, the emotional distress caused by your infidelity, compounded by the blatant financial mismanagement of marital funds for an affair, will not be overlooked by the courts. We have all the evidence, Owen. The apartment lease, the credit card statements for the furniture, the photos and videos from Mike's investigation. It's all there. You're not just guilty, you're spectacularly, undeniably guilty." Owen slumped in his chair, defeated. He knew it was true. He had been so careful, or so he thought. But he hadn't accounted for a wife who was tired of being underestimated, a wife with a sharp mind and an even sharper lawyer. He hadn't accounted for the power of a woman who decided to turn her heartbreak into her greatest weapon. "What about my reputation?" he whispered, fear flickering in his eyes. "My job? This could ruin me." I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Oh, Owen, you're worried about your reputation. You should have thought about that before you decided to play the bachelor with our family's finances. As for your job, Sterling and Hayes has a very strict code of conduct regarding employee behavior, especially involving company funds and public image. I'm sure they'd be very interested to hear about your new client in Ballantine." My words hung in the air, a silent threat. The implication was clear. If he fought, I would not hesitate to expose him professionally. The next few hours were a blur of legal jargon and Owen's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage some dignity, all while Brenda systematically dismantled his arguments. He tried to claim the apartment was for investment purposes, but the balloons and my presence quickly debunked that. He tried to minimize Tiffany's role, but Mike's video evidence of their cozy interactions was irrefutable. By the time Brenda packed up her papers, Owen was a shell of his former self. He agreed to the terms, albeit reluctantly, his signature a shaky scrawl on the preliminary agreement. As we left the apartment, leaving the red balloons to mock his defeat, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. It wasn't just relief, it was triumph. I had faced the betrayal head-on, not with tears, but with strategy and a healthy dose of dark humor. I had turned his secret love nest into his public gallows. The fallout was immediate. Owen's work trip ended abruptly. He called me later that night, his voice strained, telling me he was moving into a temporary corporate apartment. He tried to spin it as needing space, but I knew the truth. He was running. Tiffany, as it turned out, had already moved out of the apartment by the next morning, leaving a hastily written note to Owen about his deception and a demand for her security deposit back. The apartment, once a symbol of his secret life, was now just an empty, expensive reminder of his colossal mistake. My kids, Lily and Ethan, were, thankfully, shielded from the immediate drama. I told them Daddy had to travel for work for a while, and that Mommy and Daddy were going to be living in separate houses for a bit, but that we both loved them very much. It was a painful conversation, but I delivered it with a strength I didn't know I had. The ultimate poetic justice came a few weeks later. Owen's amicable divorce quickly became a very public, very messy one when he tried to renege on the financial terms. Brenda, true to her word, unleashed the full force of our evidence. The story, carefully leaked by a concerned source, me via Mike, made its way through the Maple Creek grapevine like wildfire. Owen's colleagues at Sterling and Hayes were indeed very interested. He was quietly transitioned out of his senior sales role, a euphemism for being fired. His once pristine reputation was in tatters, his social standing in our tight-knit community utterly destroyed. The country club membership? Revoked. The HOA board? He resigned in disgrace. He lost the house, the significant assets, and the respect of almost everyone who knew him. He ended up in a modest condo, paying hefty child and spousal support, a shadow of his former self. As for Tiffany, she tried to leverage her story for a bit of social media fame, but it quickly backfired, turning her into a cautionary tale of the other woman who got burned. My revenge wasn't violent or illegal. It was surgical, precise, and utterly devastating to the one thing Owen valued most, his image and his wallet. And the best part? I never even had to raise my voice. Life after Owen's spectacular implosion wasn't a fairy tale, but it was undeniably mine. The house felt lighter, cleaner, stripped of the heavy weight of his lies. The kids, after an initial period of confusion and sadness, adapted with the resilience only children possess. They saw a happier, more present mom, and that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could give them. My divorce was finalized 6 months later, a clean sweep, just as Brenda had predicted. I kept the house, the kids, and a significant portion of the marital assets. Owen, on the other hand, was left with a tarnished reputation, a diminished bank account, and the bitter taste of his own deceit. He tried to rebuild, of course, but the whispers followed him. In our suburban bubble, a scandal like that sticks to you like glitter on a toddler. He was the guy who rented an apartment for his mistress with his wife's money. That kind of story becomes local legend. I remember seeing him at Target once, a few months after the divorce. He was pushing a cart, looking haggard, picking up generic brand cereal. The sharp suits were gone, replaced by a faded polo shirt. He saw me, and his eyes flitted away, unable to meet mine. I just gave him a small, polite nod, a ghost of a smile. No anger, no triumph, just a quiet acknowledgement of how far the mighty had fallen. It was a moment of profound, almost spiritual satisfaction. Karma, it turns out, has excellent aim. The experience taught me a lot about myself. I learned that I was stronger, more resilient, and far more cunning than I ever gave myself credit for. I wasn't just Owen Campbell's wife. I was Harper Monroe, a woman who could navigate betrayal with the precision of a surgeon and the wit of a stand-up comedian. I realized that for too long, I had allowed myself to be defined by my marriage, by the role of the supportive wife. When that role was ripped away, I discovered a whole new act. My freelance graphic design business flourished. With Owen out of the picture, I had more time, more energy, and a renewed sense of purpose. I started taking on bigger, more challenging projects, even dabbling in some digital art that was purely for my own creative satisfaction. I joined a book club, started a weekly girls' night with Sarah and Chloe, and even took a pottery class. My life wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. The kids were doing great. Lily, ever the budding artist, found comfort in drawing, filling sketchbooks with fantastical creatures. Ethan, our little sports enthusiast, was excelling in his soccer league. We still had our family traditions, Thanksgiving dinner at my sister's, Christmas morning at home, but now they were filled with genuine joy, not the underlying tension of a fractured marriage. Sometimes I'd catch myself laughing out loud, remembering the look on Owen's face when he walked into that apartment. It wasn't malicious laughter, not anymore. It was the laughter of liberation, of knowing that I had turned a moment of profound pain into a catalyst for profound change. I didn't get revenge in the traditional sense of wanting him to suffer endlessly. I got justice, I got closure, and I got my life back, on my terms. The whole ordeal became my own personal, darkly comedic fable, a cautionary tale for anyone who thinks they can build a secret life on a foundation of lies. The moral of the story? Don't underestimate the quiet ones, especially the ones who work from home and have access to a good printer and a killer divorce lawyer. And never, ever rent an apartment for your mistress using funds from a joint account. Because your wife might just decide to be the first tenant, and she'll bring balloons. My life now is messy, beautiful, and authentically mine. It's a testament to the fact that even when your world implodes, you can sift through the wreckage, find the good pieces, and build something even better. And sometimes, the best way to heal is to laugh at the absurdity of it all, even if it's a little dark, a little twisted, and perfectly, wonderfully American. As for Owen, last I heard, he was trying to sell essential oils online. Some people never learn. But me? I'm just here, living my best life, one perfectly sarcastic, empowered day at a time. And trust me, the sequel is going to be even better.